Hey, yo, what's going on, guys? We're at episode number 47 of Marvel Yap today. We're going to be talking about the good old OTA we had this week, as well as what is happening with Affliction, and some of these new card mechanics in Snap we have right now, and coming out in the future. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. And as always, we are joined by the Dormammu and also Dance, the hostess with the mostest. How are we doing today, Dance?
I wasn't ready for Dormammu to be introduced in that way, but overall, I'm doing great, I think. I'm sorry. I'm so taken aback by, I thought I'm normally the thing that's said there, and I was thrown off by Dormammu. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Man, I am doing absolutely incredible. I genuinely really like this card, and I think this card has been a lot of fun. It's brought back my love for Destroy. But I still do believe that most people are playing this card incorrectly.
That's interesting. I'd probably agree with you, but I'm pretty sure we have different definitions of correct on this card. So I kind of like that, honestly. But I do think Dormammu is an absolute blast. It's a really cool card. And obviously Creative House Pocket, of course, killing it with this variant. And yeah, Dormammu is a lot of fun. It feels really interesting, really cool. And it's an interesting 7-coster, as the fact, like, I don't know if it's worth 7 cost, which is why, the spells, the ritual exists. And I don't know, I really like this guy. He's really cool. There's a lot of interesting stuff with him. So Dormammu's definitely a very enjoyable card. Not so much complemented by the OTA changes that we did get though this Thursday. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, we got some interesting OTA changes. Although, to be fair, that's not going to be all the topics we're going to talk about today. We're actually going to be starting with the OTA. Then we're going to be moving over to the current state of just the Affliction decks in the meta. Obviously, Hazmat was changed, not in this OTA, but I believe the previous one. So we're going to talk about that and how Affliction is looking nowadays. In addition, at the end of this, we're going to talk about just the new mechanics. They've brought in a bunch of new mechanics recently to Marvel Snap. You've got activates, you've got end of turn being a keyword, you've got rituals, skills. How are they all landing, and how are they going to feel with what's upcoming in Marvel Snap? So there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but yeah, you want to talk about this OT? You want to go straight into this today, or what you feeling here?
Yeah, let's jump right into what I think. So we have 2 huge changes. I think I'm gonna preface, which we're gonna start.
I'd argue there are 3.
There's 3. I think I want to hear your argument. I have 2 set that I think like legitimately are like I can say for certain, and I think one of the hugest changes was Thanos. Thanos no longer starts in your hand, which is huge, as well as his stones being changed to Space Stone, drawing Thanos instead of another card, and still having, of course, the ongoing ability, getting a bonus power as well. I believe it was a 1/2, and now it's a 1/3.
Yep. Correct.
Reality Stone went from a 1/1 to a 1/2. Time Stone now draws a card and then gives Thanos -1 cost. Mind Stone unchanged.
I think those were the only 3 changes
Power Stone
to
unchanged.
the stones.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, right? So like going through each of those, Thanos no longer starting in hand is a big nerf, especially to those like 34 card Monty decks, to decks that wanted to be able to run a bunch of tech cards because they just have a big card in hand already. You can't now guaranteed have the big card in hand. But I like what they did here in that it was a little bit too consistent before, but now they made the Space Stone. It's kind of like 1.5.
Yeah.
Like they've removed like half of a draw, I think is how you could word it from the whole thing. So I like the way that change went through. And obviously now that, Time Stone no longer started in your, Thanos no longer started in your hand, Time Stone didn't have guaranteed value, so drawing the card there makes sense. I'll be honest, I liked all these changes except for the Reality Stone.
Because it's a location control and because it's 1 cost, getting a point of power is very interesting.
Not even just that. They even talked about it a little bit in the OTA, where they said, and I can try to pull it up here in a moment. They talked about how at some point, I don't remember when they made the big change where they changed all the stones, everything around Thanos to all work with Thanos. And what is it? It is
the only one that doesn't work with Thanos. Like, it doesn't do any benefit to Thanos. It's just a location
to Thanos or the stones.
Yeah,
and that's just I get it. It's a good card to have in this deck because it gives you a piece of control, the Reality Stone. I just don't it's just currently my least favorite stone because out of every single stone that there is, that one just doesn't fit the theming of everything else.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And I think that's like whenever we've talked about Thanos before, that's been one of your main points too, is at least the villains interact with Thanos himself. And I think that's what you really enjoy about the aspect of this archetype.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is totally fair. And I do agree with as well.
Yeah. But like in general, solid bit of changes. Again, just to Thanos. And yes, a very big change. I'm just a stickler about that one piece because it doesn't. Sorry, I said one piece. I know it triggers you with your Luffy flag. Is it Luffy or Luffy? I always say it wrong.
Luffy.
And
you said it right that time, actually, the first time.
Oh, there you go. Cool. I say it right or wrong, and I never know which one. I keep forgetting because I suck at remembering things. But it is it's just the one piece of his whole archetype, his whole puzzle. It just, I don't know. It just does its own thing. Yeah.
No, I agree. And then I think we'll talk about what I think is also one of the most impactful changes, probably as one of the last cards of the OTA overview. We also then got the change to Professor X. Now skills/spells are able to be played into Professor X lane, which is actually very interesting.
Yeah, I am still uncertain whether or not this is a buff or a nerf, and I've played with this card and played against this card, and I do not know if this is a buff or a nerf to him. I kind of just think it's just different. I like it. What do you think about this change?
So I'm going to kind of piggyback off this kind of spell skill change with another kind of idea or something that has happened to me recently is I think we need more cards to be a little bit more specific because I have been playing Merlin recently and I have turned 2-drops into Killmonger and into Deathlock, and they have destroyed the spell that transformed them, and it didn't let my werewolf go off, which, I mean, I guess that's just, my werewolf didn't move, but like that interaction I think is really weird.
That doesn't make sense to me. They
get destroyed before they're banished, so that act didn't just happen.
But interesting thing though, if I'm not mistaken, if you misery a Carnage or another card that destroys things, I'm pretty sure werewolf will still jump over there afterwards, even though misery and whatever other card, like everything over there gets. So I do agree. That's not even a thing where it's as much of like just an OTA thing. That is just I have to imagine that's a current bug in the game, and that's something they probably. I mean, they even said it, right? Who was it? They said that it wasn't. They didn't test for like mirror matches or something like that. Yeah. There was something. I think I want to say Madison. I don't remember.
Addison.
Someone in the second. It was Addison. Okay. Addison and the second dinner team said that they just hadn't tested for like Dormammu mirror matches as much, and they missed a bug where like if they had to turn off like I think the animation for his first ritual because of that. I don't know.
Now
anyway, but it's one of those things.
Whenever any of the merging happens.
Does it? There's one of them. I don't remember which one, but there is a character. Oh, is it? Scratch does Mockingbird sound effect when you play a skill.
Yes. Yeah, which is also really interesting. Why does it have the Mockingbird V effect, or not V effect, the sound effect, S effect?
Speaking of sound effects, what are you doing with the music in the game? Because you don't typically use other music in your streams. I don't either. What are you doing with music right now as like it just doesn't work in ladder basically?
Honestly, I'm trying to talk even more when I'm doing gameplay to kind of compensate for the lacking music, or it literally is just dead silent, because at least in Conquest, the second game, there is music going into that, but in Ladder, it's literally zero music at all whatsoever, so it is just a concurrent Tucker just yap fest, like every game.
I'm gonna give you a tip that I've been doing. I don't know if, what is it? Use old season music.
Just find like recordings of it or whatever.
Yeah. It's like all on YouTube and such. I've just been doing that for my streams because that gives like at least it's marvelous. And also like I forgot how much of a banger like the Symbiote Spider-Man music is, bro.
Yes.
Sorry, we're just starting yapping. It's totally unrelated to the OTA at this point. But random thing, if that works out, as you're nodding, your whole camera nodding.
Yeah, no, my knee hit the table and it shook everything on screen.
Dude, it was a belly buster. But speaking of busting bellies, I don't know if that's a thing. I just made that up. What's the? Please talk about the next card.
The next card we do have Misery. Misery is now a 4/9. Originally, Data Mine Misery was a 5-10, and then she changed to a 4-7, and then she was a 4-8, and now they buffed her again to a 4-9. Like, I mean, I didn't think this card needed another point of power. I really did not. But
yeah, this was the one that I was most surprised by.
Yeah.
My theory with this is that yes, Misery was used in a lot of decks, but that her lane oftentimes was still losing. So that even though she was being used, she was still losing the game in the end. Yeah. So they had to give it. It's where it's like, yes, she's being used a lot, but the win rate sucks. Kind of on the inverse, where like a card is being used a lot, but a card isn't being used a lot, but the win rate's like incredibly good. Where it's like, oh hey, yeah, you may not realize this, but this deck's actually amazing. Not many people are using it. We have to nerf it.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, I guess they wanted like the accessibility for Misery and stuff to go up, which, like you said, like I think it's really interesting. And of course, like if you're looking at some like the top performing decks right now, at least when I was looking at it for like cards of the week and stuff, like Misery's Victoria hand deck is performing incredibly well. In all forms of Infinite, and like even like top 10% of Infinite had a 57% win rate plus 0.4 cubes. I was like, this is actually like going crazy.
That's really good.
It's not just because of Misery, of course. Like you have the Frigga, you have the Victoria hand, you have like the card generator stuff.
Yeah.
But I was like, this 1 point of power made a pretty big difference. Which another card that did get 1 point of power is going to be Absorbing Man, which I haven't seen a lot of this, but I think they did this to compensate for a change we're doing a little bit later here as we talk about the OTA. But what do you think about the Absorb Man change?
I've actually tried using both these cards in hand buff, right? Like I love that style of deck. As a shameless plug, I had an 80% win rate, and it wasn't with Absorb Man deck, unfortunately, but I really did enjoy the Absorbing one. A Misery hand buff deck with like Phoenix Force and stuff like that.
Do you have a video on that deck?
No, I have to edit another video. Wait.
Which means if he has a video in the works, means you should be clicking down in the description to find Dance's YouTube channel where you can watch said video where he had a crazy cube rate, crazy win rate. Talk about hand buff when we have a hand buff card coming out this week, potentially. I would definitely check out all of Dance's info down in the description. His stream, which he'll be streaming some of this content live as Clea launches either at the time of or later in that day as well. His Twitch, his YouTube, his Twitter, all of his links where you can find incredible content, snap content, variety content, great vibes, an obscene amount of yapping because that's just what we do here. But definitely check out all of Dance's links as he absorbs all of those likes and subscribes that you guys are going to be adding to his repertoire.
This guy. But beyond the self plugs, which turned into plugs for others, I think Absorbing Man, I get why they made this change. And I think it's fair. He kind of just like fell out of the meta. The best place I think for him was a Surfer style of deck. And can we skip ahead to they even said they wanted to increase the competition in the 4-cost slot, make so some other cards potentially felt like a more just like the right option 9 times out of 10 after they made a big nerf, or maybe not even a big nerf. I don't know. What do you think about the nerf they did for the 4-costs?
So they nerfed Galacta. She now only gives +2 instead of +3. It went from a 4-5 to a 4-6. And from what I have heard from people who just play Surfer, some Surfer mains, it has almost entirely killed Surfer. The change to Galacta has, because using it onto the Broodlings, yes, it only lost 3 power on the initial throw of Galacta, but if you talk about it on the Broodlings as well, you're losing kind of, is it 3 power there in general because of that change?
You'd be losing 3 in general.
3, and then on the next play losing another 1, so at least 4 points of power. When Heart of the Cards, which is a Surfer main, one of the top players in ladder playing Surfer, was talking about it, it's more like a point of 6 points of power being changed because you're not able to get the obscene value you were in the past, which is really impactful for Surfer to allow you to scale vertically against a pretty powerful meta we have right now when it comes to scalers. So that deck definitely took a huge hit from this change, which is why they did the Absman change, I guess, like Dan said, to compensate for said
Yeah.
change because Absman hasn't been a 4-5 for a minute, but when Absman was originally a 4-5 before Galactic came out, he was used in a lot of Patriot Surfer for the Patriot on the Broodlings with Absman on the Broodlings and having value there. But that's kind of just not really a meta deck at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up, but this was a pretty huge change.
Yeah, it definitely has been. It definitely was a pretty big one. I will say, I think it's a rough one, but it also, I don't think it killed it as much potentially. I don't know. At least looking at public-facing stats, it's still being used. It's just not being used in every single, like, as a forecast in every single other deck as of yet, which tells you a little bit there. It's wild to me that this was a card they did release at base stats, right? You go with the minimal stats of 4/6. And then throwing in the +2 or +3, and then realizing you have to do it. It's a big change. It's a very big change that they've done here, and it was deserved, unfortunately.
Yes, it was deserved.
They even said it, right? Like +3 is not a thing you can do. They've tried it before. Who was it? Who else was it? It was Elsa. Yeah, I was thinking Emma. Elsa Bloodstone. They tried it there. Didn't work either. You can't really be doing a permanent
Dagger.
+3. Dagger. Oh yeah, true. Dagger was another one that happened with.
Athena, it works
right? How can you,
because it's different, but
yeah, Athena's different. I don't know. And you know who else is different? As another slide into the conversation, Ironheart.
yeah, Ironheart did get changed as well.
Yeah,
+3 to 2 cards instead of +2 to 3 cards. So you can target this better, but I haven't done enough testing with Ironheart to be like, yo, this change is incredible, or yo, this change is bad. Just on paper, I'm like, this is a very interesting change.
I haven't seen something crazy here, and I don't know if it will be insane with this. I have seen I think I've seen one Ironheart deck pretty much after she got changed. It's an interesting change. I get why they've done this change. I just don't know if it matters. Straight up, it's for the new series. It's for the Ironheart series. They changed Ironheart, but they didn't adjust the hood at all because the hood is just balanced as is, right, Dance? I said a demon nerf forever ago would be warranted.
Yeah, I think it could be, but
you know they would never nerf a card as soon as like a bundle comes out, right, Tuck? They wouldn't put a bundle out and then nerf the card.
Yeah, never would they ever do something like that. Nothing like Red Guardian losing a point of power, which is, I'm sorry, G, but it is warranted. It is a warranted nerf on Red Guardian going from a 3/3 to a 3/2. So I know you feel bad about the card, but it definitely was a warranted change. And honestly, with the way Cerebro 2 is right now and everything as well, I think this is a good benefit for Cerebro 2. So like I think it just kind of shifts into from C3 to C2. C2 always, not always, but like now has been just performing better than C3. Yeah, I think it's a good change.
I think this is for one a very good change. And I'm going to point out actually specifically what Second Dinner even said about this change, because they said something very specifically that I really liked. They want the average 3 energy card played to be clearly stronger than Red Guardian, unless he hits like a random card, whatever. So I think that's a really big change and a really important detail that I absolutely love. It's just like, yes, I am fine. I didn't hate the card at a 3/3, but, and again, the way that they said this as well is like just trying to reduce the power and presence of tech cards just a little bit. Red Guardian being a 3/5, that's like just like above average-ish, being what it could be for a 3 cost. And they're like, they want typically if you look at a 3 cost card, it should have an impact less than Red Guardian. So this change is good. I think this is a very solid change. I don't know if it is going to be enough. I don't know if it's going to be too much. This is one that I feel like we have to wait and see a lot more so, because while I think his immediate play rate is going to go take a nosedive, I don't expect him to be gone.
Yeah, I think this is just like, I lost a point of power, but I'm still good. Like, and I think what you do, like, it doesn't take away the utility of this card, which I think is really good. Like, not increasing the cost of this. It's not like, this is apples to oranges, but it's not the same as Rock Slide getting nerfed. and getting the increase in cost. I think that like is something that literally changed the dynamic of it. This now, of course, like you feel that it's not a 3-5 essentially anymore. It's a 3-4. But what it does more often than not, you're just really trying to take away what your opponent was doing, opposed to necessarily really relying on that extra power. And I think it still does its job. It would be different if they had removed a point of power from the Affliction and from the base power. I think that would have been a pretty big impact.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think I don't hate this. Just like this change over here was very impactful for the card, and it really makes it extra playable.
If y'all don't know, he's talking about Wolfsbane. I'll disagree with you here.
Really? Why?
This was a mistake of a buff. This hurt the card more than it helped it.
Yes,
straight up.
It did, because if you have Ravonna or you're trying even to do negative with Wolfsbane because you don't have Sage,
can't do that.
They're literally like, I don't know why they did it. Just I know we talked about +3 being bad, but like Wolfsbane with +3 is okay.
Make it a 3-1, make it a 3-0 +3. Like, also one of the reasons the biggest reason I said with this is you can if you make it a 3-0 or a 3-1, and then you give it that +3 for the bonus. Imagine that with Wong. With Wong, that would be insane, because then you could be able to get, like, it could ramp up higher straight up than what you typically would get with a Sage. And that would make, I feel like it could make more sense there, because Sage, obviously, you have to rely on your opponent's stuff.
Yep.
But this feels like a real nothing burger of a change. I don't know. Yes, it can get to a 3-8 now, but I think it's better being able to be more fluctuating with that, with just being able to go up really high or really low. And even with the 3-1, if it's +3, it's better than this, because again, Ravonna, as well as I like the Wong value here. It just feels worse.
There's gotta be like some crazy amount of Wolfsbane plays in the earlier pools of the game for them to think that this change would be really impactful. Because like you said, there is literally no usage for the no, I'm gonna stand on business. There is literally no usage for Wolfsbane at all in this game right now, because Sage exists. Like you said, and we talked about this in your stream the other day too. If Sage didn't exist, this would be interesting. I still think it would be a bad change. And like, yes, +3 is like is the warranted. We don't want to do +3. We never want to do. But like, this card just is not good. Okay, I get it. I get it to 3-8, but I have to fill this lane. Of course, it's not going to be super predictable because I'm not expecting my opponent ever to throw down a Wolfsbane. I'll be honest. But, like, this card is just bad. And I don't know what we're doing here. Why did we still adjust Wolfsbane before we adjusted some of these other cards that need more help instead? Shout out to the homie Sabretooth. But, like, it is so just crazy.
I heard he was super playable with Kid Omega. That's what I heard.
Playable, but not good. He is, like, the 17th or 18th card you put into your destroy list, and he does not... He did add some value, a little bit of value, but it wasn't enough consistent value to be like, yo, let's freaking go, Sabretooth. And it's just like, I'm sorry, but I guess if the only cards that really like matter if you have fangs are either some sort of tech card or some vampires, right? Like
yeah,
it's crazy.
I don't know. I just don't like this change in general. I just feel like it. I don't know. We've talked about Wolfsbane enough. This is just like, I expect legitimately no change here.
Yeah, no. But
yeah,
I do like that the Ancient One did get buffed. The Tau Mandala is now a 2 cost instead of a 3 cost, and I think that is a great change.
I think this was a legitimate buff, and I actually, I think it's a very real. It's much more real of a card now. Like, it's the difference between 6 power and 5 power for spending for these bonuses, right? Of the Tau Mandala. It's very large, very insane. And this is it just feels like such a meaningful and impactful change.
Yes.
That I personally really do like. And I would potentially, and this is potentially, the craziest thing here, I think this is one of the more real changes of the OTA. This was personally one of the ones I'd say is maybe, like, there is the Thanos change, and like the Thanos change, we have one more change that we're going to talk about in a bit, and the Tau Mandala. I think those are like the big 3 personally for me. I know there's stuff that's like nerfed and whatever, but like this feels the biggest.
Yeah, no,
because isn't Cerebro 5 like crazy currently a little bit?
No, Cerebro 5 is genuinely performing now. And talking about, we'll go ahead and talk about Rhino with this as well. Cerebro 5 is genuinely doing well, and I think these changes really do go together because, I mean, you know, Ancient One's a 3-5, Rhino's a 3-5. Rhino still adds the rock to your side of the board, which I think
Rhino's
is...
a 2-5.
Or 2-5.
Sorry, I'm going to specify there.
Yeah, 2-5, sorry. I had a dog in my face kind of throwing everything off. But yeah, Rhino's a 2-5 now. He went from a 3-6 to a 2-5, and it was a nerf in power, but a buff in cost. And the rock is still very interesting that it just, you know, it adds a rock to location. I don't know. I guess the premise is just he had a simulator of destruction. But
it's just it's meant to be like debris, basically. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why I'm like, as much as I'm going to be like, oh yeah, sure, this card definitely is real, I'm also like, kind of feel like Ancient One's a bigger deal.
Yeah, she should have released it as a 3-5 2-cost Tal Mandala.
No, yeah, it 100% should have been a 2-cost. Again, just 6 was too much, and like I use that so much trying to get to higher ranks for that, and it was not feeling great.
Which, like, if you think about it too, like the decks, like if it's not Cerebro, if you're using her in a Victoria hand style deck, you're more than likely going to be having Quinjet as one of your options too. So having that as a 1-cost spell is actually really impactful as well. When the premise of Victoria hand decks is having as many Victoria hands as possible, and then fodder, literally just fodder created cards is just kind of whatever.
It feels very oh god, what is this? It is there's one card that it is god, I've lost my train of thought entirely, but I just think there's a lot of big power, a lot of interesting stuff there that I think it's a big deal. I think it's a very big deal, and I like what they've done here.
Yeah, and we're not saying like, you know, this makes Rhino the most meta dependent card or whatever in town, but it's like these are actually really good quality of life changes. Where which is great that we also have this contrast. You're like, yes. We have Wolfsbane and we also have Ironheart, and we're like,
I like that they tried at the Ironheart. I think this isn't like I even talked to you about it a little bit, like when we said on stream with Ironheart. I was like, you know what, maybe there's a chance you want to do it in these decks. Maybe it's this stuff. I disagree now. I've messed with it a little bit. I just don't think you can because the reason I'm going to say that I think the Ironheart's actually a nerf here is because of Sebastian Shaw.
Yeah,
I think. Because now if you don't hit Sebastian Shaw, you don't have as many chances to hit him.
Yeah.
And also, if your power gets confined to one lane, it's not easier to spread it out. So it's like very good for a single location.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to do it everywhere. So that's kind of why I'm like, yeah, but also no.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, Lockjaw also got changed from, I think,
Lockjaw is the one I think is the biggest, right? We're going to say?
Yeah, this is the one. I think you said you had 3 huge changes. I had 2. I think this is what Dance is referring to as his third.
Yeah. Wait, who's the other one then?
I was saying Galacta and Thanos were the ones.
Oh, okay, for sure. Yeah, that's fair. But Lockjaw, I think, is definitely. I mean, this is a very large change, especially. I remember. We both remember, right? Like past of just hella Lockjaw, Thanos You remember Thanos Lockjaw with the old Space Stone that let you move out a card out of the location?
Yes, I remember watching. These are the old days. 2 guys hit rank or 1,000 level in Infinite before there was ranks in Infinite. They got all the way to 1,000 playing.
I forgot about that.
Thanos.
Yeah, no. So the Lockjaw got changed to be from its 4/5. With its once per turn, you may shuffle. It was even a once per turn anymore. Or they removed that.
They removed the once per turn.
Yeah, 4/5 once per turn. You may swap this out with a card in your deck to now being an activatable card that says after you play your next card, swap it with one from your deck. This was another really cool change, another really interesting change that I thought actually this out of all the changes that they've done, right? There's a lot of really cool ones, really interesting ones. This is my favorite, just because I think this makes a lot more stuff playable, and I actually really like it.
Yeah, and I haven't done any testing with Lockjaw. It was something I was planning on doing, but instead I've just been on this Dormammu wave, just running around. But like, this is a really interesting way to. Just get better value out of cards, like using this with an Electro, or using this with, like, even at the end of the game, you have this on the board. You're like, well, I need this action card for my deck. I have a 1 out of 3. Like, helping you just have better outs into situations. Of course, it is Activate, which makes this very interesting. But Activate is going to get better in the future as we kind of just do some foreshadowing. You
saw last week, if you watched us. Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff there. So I actually had a chance to play with a little bit of Lockjaw. I even messed with the new Professor X in the pile like that. And I did a Lockjaw Professor X War Machine Infinite deck.
Okay.
With like Cersei and other stuff like that. And oh my gosh.
It felt good?
It feels so good. Lockjaw feels like a really awesome card.
So people are just not... So like this got changed in the OTA, and I feel like not many people are either covering it or just talking about it, because it kind of was just like, it's Lockjaw, whatever. But
I feel like that it was just because it's at the end of the list. I think if this, because again, if you actually read the full OTA notes, this was the very last one in there. And I think, and they even said that they thought this was the biggest change.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it feels like this is the one that's been most ignored.
Yep.
This is the one that I think is the most interesting, because they're just willing to be like, hey, this isn't locational anymore, right? Like, that's just massive with Lockjaw. So I think this is a chance to be potentially just the best Lockjaw-like change, or just best change currently of this OT. I like it a lot. I think there's a lot of untapped potential here, and it's outside of trying to do Cerebro 2 M'Baku. I did try. That isn't the place you go for.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I think overall this OTA was pretty good. I don't think it was like the craziest OTA ever. I like the change we had. There were some duds, but like it wasn't like, yo, this OTA did nothing and all these just trash cards got stat buffs, only 1 power change, which is great, because like a lot of these OTAs recently has been like card got +1, card got -1, card got +1, card got -1. And this time we actually had some legitimate things happen. Yes, card got +1, card got -1, but it was more impactful card got +1 or -1 changes this time around than previously. We had some warranted nerfs that were needed as well, since Thanos had gone so long without a nerf, and we talked about Galacta for ages needing some sort of kind of change just so the other 4-cost cards, whether that be Kahori, whether that be Gwenpool, just get some extra value, which Kahori and Gwenpool are kind of going to be some potentially great cards for...
I think I think they were on the edge of being great. So, I mean, yeah, let's talk about Clea here, because these are, what is it? You talk about Clea, because I actually have a big thing I'm going to say about her after you introduce her properly.
Okay, so Clea is a 1-cost 2-power card. When this permanently gains power, which means from an on reveal or from a location that adds power to a card, not when like a blue Marvel or a Khazar hits this card, not ongoing power. You will get the Flames of Faltine to your hand, and this works if Clea is in hand or in play. The Flames of Faltine is a 1-cost spell. On reveal, afflict an enemy card here with -3 power, and Clea can get power consistently, just in a game. Not saying like you're very consistently going to be able to get power necessarily onto Clea, but you can get the Flames of Faltine multiple times in a game. It's not just limited to once per game, so it's something that can happen repeatedly.
Which is, I think that's a very cool piece personally. But so I mentioned this, right? I really want to like this a lot more, and I was doing some canoodling, messing with some stuff, trying to figure out what was going to work here, and I realized a really annoying thing about this card. It does have the thing where it says, you know, if in hand or in play.
Yeah.
But the in hand makes me, you know, it makes me want to try to use hand buff and stuff, and I have a hand buff deck that we'll talk about here in a second. But do you know how many cards buff the hand?
Very
cards in hand?
Like very minimal. When I was thinking about it, it was like only a handful, right? Like
there are not even a handful, I'd argue.
There's only 4?
There are currently 3 cards that directly buff one of your cards in hand. 4, and if you count the one thing I mentioned was I even DM'd you this. I'm like, there's a card that no one's talking about with this, that if this card isn't playable immediately, wait. And it will be next week, because Mr. Fantastic First Steps.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
is one of the
can buff potentially.
He's gonna there are 4 in total.
Yeah.
With I got 2 asterisks actually, so it's like 6-ish. You've got Toxie, who sucks.
Yep.
You got Nakia, who's not the worst. Gwenpool, who's good.
Yep.
And then you've got Mr. Fantastic First Steps.
Yep.
Then the 2 other cards that you have are Mirage and Morgan Le Fay.
Which Mirage, your opponent has to be running Clea for you to get the value.
With Morgan Le Fay, you have to discard the card. So
or destroy it.
Oh yeah, true, or destroy it, right? But that's where my issue with this comes in, where it's like I want to like this card. I want this to be a really cool card. But the if in hand or in play, I wish it was just like in play at this point, because it feels like it's 3-4-ish cards that it really can work with otherwise. Because maybe it was just insane with with Surge, with Festus, with Okoye.
You wish it was also in deck.
I wish it was like Sebastian Shaw, where it was just wherever this was. Maybe that's busted, but the specific thing where it's just if in hand or in play really makes me struggle to want to use this. So I want to like, I really do want to like this card, but I'm also like, what am I doing here? Because yeah, but to be fair though, there are a lot of cards that buff cards on the board, and so a lot of those can work out well and potentially do well, like you mentioned with Kaori. I mentioned Marvel Boy forever ago. There's a bunch of stuff like that where it's like, yes, these could be really solid, but then it's just it feels like the majority of situations are going to be caring about the board. And also, if it's hidden, if it's like face down with a, what's it? And then it gets buffed by, let's imagine, a Galacta or an Elsa Bloodstone. Do you get buffs there?
You should, because then it gains permanent power.
Yes, but it's not. Is it in play yet? It's not. Is it? I don't know that.
Oh, no, you're saying like if it's like under like a dream dimension or something?
A dream dimension, or it just hasn't revealed yet, right? Because both of those 2 cards add power before the card is revealed.
Well, so like Sebastian Shaw, whenever he
but
gets
that says wherever he is. That doesn't matter.
But like this in play, it would make sense because you're getting the play to happen. Because I think Shuri is like the next card you play. Galacta is the next card you play. So technically that would precede it being played. I think it should work.
I would hope.
Yeah, I would.
I do agree that it should.
Yeah.
But also, if it doesn't, I'm honestly not going to be surprised.
Yeah, no, I think this should be a wherever. And I think something cool to mention, like what you're saying too, is the way Dormammu interacts. I feel like Kalia could react the same way. Like Dormammu doesn't have to be in your hand or on the board to get the power from step 1 or from step 2 and gives you the next spell in hand. So I think Clea could kind of work in a similar way. Like it wouldn't be necessarily hard mechanically to add that next spell or add the Faultine to your hand from her getting buffed, especially if this card falls flat. I could see them changing that since that she is now in snap packs as opposed to like being in spotlight to be able to make that change.
Yeah, so we'll see what actually occurs here if they actually make this change. But when I'm looking at this, I'm like, it feels like it's falling flat.
Yeah.
So I don't know how great this card is going to be. I want it to be cool. I want this card to be cool. And maybe, honestly, if they make this change, maybe the Flames Faultine has to do only -2, right? Maybe that's the thing if it goes to wherever it is. But well, I don't know.
I also want to like kind of like preface here too, like we're trying to get Clea buffed multiple times here, like with what we're saying.
Yes.
But like honestly, Clea getting buffed once and landing the Faultine is minimum a 2/6, which is still really good for what she can do. But of course, that is still like they don't have Luke Cage, and you're able to do the stuff. But which like makes it like that on paper, that's really good stats. That's good for the card. But still, if you're able to do it multiple times, you want to find a way to be able to do it multiple times, so you're not just like, oh, I hit this one time and now I'm just done kind of thing.
No, that's part of the reason, right? Yeah. Because if you build a deck to have a trigger exactly once, why are you doing that? It doesn't make any sense. So you want to be able to get a bunch of triggers, but then if I'm not getting value with all those triggers, then what's going to happen here? And maybe this means like the decks need to be running just a bunch more cards that are buffing the cards on the board. Maybe it's a Zoo style. Maybe it is Galacta, Elsa, stuff like that. I don't know. But it That's why I'm like I'm so stoked about this card because it does seem like it has a lot of options, but at the same time, there's so many different other pieces that I'm like, but is it really gonna land? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like we weren't super low on this card. I don't think, or maybe we were. I will have to look at the.
I will tell us this because because here's the thing as well. We do need to do this because we did have the astral projection, and I forgot last week we needed to add that to our rankings, even though stuff changes now, and of course rankings get everywhere. But for astral projection, as a little bit of as an aside, where does that fit in your rankings for this season? As we'll probably talk about it again next week.
I haven't played any games with astral projection, so this is all just theory crafting on paper. What I would have it.
Yeah.
I have it probably above Clea.
Above Clea, so that would be. So the order right there, for what it's worth, is I'll just tell you again. For Clea, you have above her Scratch, below her Morgan.
I probably have it above Scratch.
Above or below Scratch, you said?
Above Scratch.
Okay, for the astral projection?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's fair. I have mine. I'm just, again, in the group of 3. I've got it currently in between Jennifer, Kale, and Morgan.
Okay.
And I'm not going to specify exactly where on the list it was, but just as a aside, and we'll talk about all that again next week when we do a full season review / new season preview stuff. But yeah, I don't know. But let's talk about Clea, right? Let's actually go back to Clea, and we've got some decks here, right?
Yeah, and yeah, the Flames of Faltine afflicts with -3 power. If we didn't talk about that enough, but if we're talking about these decks over here, the first deck we have on screen is going to be Dance's Hand Pump Hand Hurt.
I mean, simple enough with Clea, right? And it's so one of the things I tried to do with this, and I don't know how it's going to work, is I tried to make it cheaper so you could throw more of these cards down. But also, it does kind of struggle, and this is one of the reasons why I'm uncertain about this, is like, how many things are really going to be able to buff up the hand? I don't know. I think there's a real chance that I want some other pieces. I think Wasp is a really potential thing that I'm subbing out for maybe a Galacta or a Absorb Man here. And I don't know. And I built it, and I really just kept looking at that, and I didn't have any answer there. So I kind of just said, screw it. We'll leave it this way. I think I want Hand Buff to be like a fun place with it. I want it to work, but I've already talked about the difficulties.
Yeah, I think I like where the headspace is at here. It just like Clea looks like the 14th or like 15th card here. Like there's something else you would run instead just to have better consistency, and probably like you make Clea Mr. Sinister instead, and like you just kind of get
Mr. Sinister probably does even better. Yeah, or you just want more on so we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I'm wrong. I mean, and the worst part is, right, I can't even use like Toxie. Toxie is one that should just be a +3 straight up for her ability, and you could put her back to a 2/1. I don't even know if she's still good there. But like, it's so, I don't know. There's so many awkward pieces here.
Yeah, no. With my list, I made her not necessarily like a primary win con. So like I just poured more into the Nicholas Scratch stuff. The ways you can buff Clea are either Galacta, Gwenpool, or Kahori. Those are pretty much the only way. And my thing was like, if you buff her one time, then she gets the Faltine once. And my main thing is I'm using Scratch more as an engine than I am using Clea more as an engine. So it's kind of like I made a good card, the good cards moto list, but like worse kind of is what the concept is here. So we'll see how it goes. But like this is pretty much all the not all, but like pretty much you don't have Dormammu and you don't have Astral Projection in here for like 2 of the main spell cards you're missing, but you have Merlin, you have Agamotto, you got all that for Scratch.
Can't believe you don't have the ancient one. It's crazy.
Yeah, no ancient one in here either, but I mean I don't have like any ongoing cards, so
yeah, no, I'm joking. Yeah, so we'll see what happens here. I think it's gonna be really interesting to actually mess with. I'm hoping Clea's better than I'm like trying to do more theory crafting and deck building with her. I'm hoping she's gonna be better than I'm actually thinking here, but there's a really unfortunately solid chance that she's just gonna fall flat. I'm scared of that. I want to be wrong, Tuck. I want to be wrong, but we'll see what happens. Maybe the Flames team are going to be busted, right? Maybe that 1 -3 is going to be insane. Maybe that changes the current state of Affliction. Talk. What do you think?
I don't necessarily know if it's gonna change the state of Affliction, just because.
Did you like how I said the name of the next section?
It was a great segment. Because like Affliction's not in a horrible spot per se, but I definitely think the hazmat change to a 3 cost was actually very impactful to that style of deck, and like it's still doing okay, but it's still not like super meta relevant in general. I'm seeing a lot in Sanctum. Like if you're not playing Guardians, or you're playing Guardians with Affliction, to get just some extra power, but it's like not even like hazmat. It's a lot. The better card, maybe not better cards, or maybe it is. The cards that are really popping off when it comes to Affliction are the stealing kind of cards, opposed to just regular Affliction.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. So I think this was I think, again, just going right specifically to hazmat, that was a really big change they made to Affliction. And honestly, a big nerf, because I think Affliction was it was really kind of consistently doing solid. They've said that for a bit behind the scenes. And it's interesting that now stealing is going to be the best way to do stuff oftentimes. But I also kind of wonder, I feel like it was probably the correct change still.
Yes.
As if we are noticing this much currently, we're noticing this many changes, this big of a thing. I wonder how much it was just kind of sitting in the background, just consistently being a great deck beforehand.
Yeah, and it goes back to like the Ajax being just so good as a powerhouse in general, and being able to get value out of Malekith and stuff too, being able to play like a Malekith hazmat, or like now, I mean, there is like Toxic Surfer, Toxic Surfer, hazmat's a 3 cost, you get the value there, but like even like that OG Toxic Surfer, you have your Wong into hazmat, and like being able to do that with other stuff, hazmat, Odin, or like Odin and other Affliction cards, just being able to do more with like the Sarah tech and like all of that in general it's really interesting to see where that is. Also looking at like Scream, because Scream is an Affliction card because it steals and it afflicts that -2, gains the 2 power, is very interesting. While Luke Cage still has kind of slowed down in play rate, not necessarily fallen off, because Luke Cage is still around, especially in that like Cerebro 2 style list. You're still seeing a lot of Luke Cage there. It's just there's no direct also Red Guardian got nerfed. Red Guardian, lost a bunch of power. That was
another thing I was gonna say, yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily affect his Affliction, but it does affect his base power in general. It's just, I don't know, there's so many different ways to afflict cards, like Bullseye. Like what do you think about the Bullseye deck right now?
I kind of feel like the Bullseye deck's it hasn't fallen off, but it definitely is kind of slowed down, which I think is a really good thing. I think it's still fine. I think the deck is still good. It's just definitely it's just kind of slowed its dominance over, it feels like, the most of the metagame. But I want to point out one thing that I hadn't noticed, or I hadn't really thought about, and we've talked about Diamondback quite a few times on the app, and I've consistently said it was just it was either all or nothing kind of. And I think I've been wrong about talking about Diamondback pretty much the whole time, because I don't think I don't think I should be looking at her as this just hurts more. It's just a way to make the cards hurt more. This is meant to be, and I think it's a really cool way of doing it. I feel like it's meant to be a way of just saying Ajax wins 1 lane, Diamondback wins the second.
Yes.
And I feel like you probably said that, and I've probably heard it before, and it just took forever for this to click to me, but it's just this card is meant to just be a secondary payoff for that Affliction style deck that we previously had with Ajax, and I like the way that it works even more so, because once I realized that. And I think it's a really cool change, really interesting change to the way that Affliction had just made this shift entirely. And I think it's probably with that in mind, right? Having 2 different big payoffs for Affliction, I think is the way to say it. It makes a lot of sense that Hazmat had to take that hit. I kind of think this is probably fair in Afflictions. While it may still suck, it's probably still balanced.
Yeah, no, I think Affliction is more balanced than ever, and I think that's the main thing. I'm not hearing a lot of people complain about Affliction. I just feel like there's so many different ways to do it now, which kind of helps. Even like Dormammu's spell, step 2, being for Destroy. Destroy now has a way to afflict power onto your opponents as well, which is very interesting. And like this, essentially, let's say it does get hit by Hazmat, okay? Let's say like Hazmat does hit your Diamondback. But like, so Diamondback goes to a 3-2, but then there's 4 cards in your opponent's lane. Essentially, Diamondback is a 3-10, not including the extra 1 point of power taken away. She's kind of almost a 3-14 in an instance. 3-10, of course, is the more practical way, but like 3-10, the downside is a card has to be hit with Affliction. Even if there's only 1 card hit with negative power, that makes her at least a 3-5. So like, there's all the different ways there. And then another card, when it comes to actually getting value now, and talking about Cerebro too, Lasher works with ongoing power. It doesn't have to be permanent power. So this getting hit with a Mystique and, you know, Cerebro, that just right then and there, even let's say you Blue Marvel it as well, you're looking at a 2-9. You're afflicting a card on the opponent's side of the board with 9 power, negative 9 power, is kind of crazy too. It is interesting that this card is getting more play. Glad for the card in general. But you have so many different decks now that can use Affliction in a variety of different ways. Even like Bounce with Silver Sable, which you're seeing Silver Sable in like classic Bounce. You're also seeing it in Morgan Le Fay Bounce. Like, it's really just interesting that Affliction, yes, the Hazmat change was pretty big, you know, going to 3 cost, but there's still a large variety of ways to make it work. And as we see Luke Cage kind of fall more and more off the meta, where we would talk about Luke Cage every single week. We need a Luke Cage change. We need a Luke Cage change. We need a Luke Cage change. It was actually, we need a Hazmat change to kind of make it so you're not using Luke Cage as much.
Which, it's such a weird thing, but I just love that. I think it's a really cool ability, or really just like interesting way to look through this stuff. You know what I realized, by the way? Do you remember we talked about like forever ago when I think it was Cassandra's first Data Mind? Yeah. She had like, I think Drain, as a keyword for her. But as we're seeing now with like Data Mine cards and Silver Sable and such, Steel has become that new keyword. You know, Rogue had Steel the entire time.
Oh, the Steel disability. So it wasn't necessarily the same. It wasn't like a new new text term.
Not really, right? Because it already existed. It just it meant it was already existing in the game. We just kind of didn't realize it for the longest period. Hold up. Does she have a? Sorry, I'm distracted. Does she have a zipper going through her stomach? Or is that like, just like a white part of the dress?
I think this is just an indentation of her abs, but
that doesn't. It looks weird.
It does look like a little funky.
It looks like her. Yes. Her stomach unzips.
Yep. It's like an alien that's gonna come out of her stomach, or the Thing. If you guys have seen the Thing.
Yeah, the Thing First Steps. He's coming out next month in Marvel Snap.
Oh no, not that Thing. No.
No, you telling me there's another The Thing?
Yes, there's another The Thing. If you know, you know.
That's fair. But I think there's a lot of really awesome stuff here, and it's I think Affliction, the current state of it, as much as I think it's I feel like there's better moments and worse times of it. I honestly think that it's better being a little bit worse. I think that probably makes the card feel, in the end, or just the archetype, makes it just feel better, makes it feel cleaner. So I'm okay with this stuff here, personally.
Yeah, no, I think it's okay, and it's in an all right spot. I don't think it needs necessarily any buffs just yet. I don't think, like, unless Luke Cage just goes tremendous play rate through the roof, then maybe you need to make some adjustments then and there. But like, we'll see what happens, because the Steel mechanic, though, and the Affliction mechanic, or just a few of the mechanics we have in the game, and I'm not talking about those people that fix cars. I'm talking about the stuff that happens, whether it is end of turn, activate, on reveal, ongoing, swap this, gain power there, play spell, revive this. Like, there's so many different mechanics in the game and mechanics coming out that Dance and I wanted to take the time to kind of just talk about it. And I think if Dance wants to lead us off here, What are you thinking when it comes to the mechanics we have in the game and those that are coming out here in the future?
So end of turn is, I think, one of the mechanics that's actually, it's newer, but it's also technically older, right? Because all these cards existed previously as end of turn mechanics. They just didn't have the specific keyword attached to them, or like key phrase or whatever you would have. And I feel like this is one that's probably been the easiest for second dinner to get a grasp on. Because again, it did exist previously with, like we have on screen right now, Sunspot. The high evolutionary cards, a lot of them also had that same style. So in one hand, I do think that they've done a good job with this type of ability because it's existed. And I'm glad about that. I think they've done a solid job here, especially with, I think, the next season, right? Currently for Fantastic Four First Steps. Every single one of the cards, or maybe not all of them, maybe at least Fantastic Four cards.
Yes,
they all have
cards besides Herbie.
Yeah, they all have a end of turn ability, which is really cool. Or I guess technically Invisible Woman's activate, but she re-triggers the end of turn stuff.
Fantastic cards activate for end of turn. Herbie has an activate for end of turn cards too.
He does? I didn't remember that one actually. I don't know. These are obviously data mines and not certain, yada yada. But so I think this is one that I would say, and I'm assuming you agree here, at least on this one, this is one they've done well with.
Yes, no. Sunspot is definitely a card that they have done incredibly well as an end of turn card that makes a lot of sense and is a really good prelude to just being able to understand the concept of end of turn.
Yeah. I think what I will say, actually, the weirdest, I think, end of turn card, and actually, I don't even know if you have it pulled up. I think it's actually, I would argue, Makari.
You think Makari is the weirdest end of turn?
Because it's the only end of turn that works in your hand.
Yeah, besides High Evo, Hulk.
Yeah, but that one again specifies specifically that it works in your hand, whereas Makari, technically it kind of does, it also doesn't. That one's also, that's just a weirder one personally to me here. But again, it kind of all makes sense the way that these cards work, that they've done this end of turn ability in order to be like, hey, this is a blatant thing for whenever the turn ends, you have this. I do think they probably should have something for a few of these other like specific triggers with the start of turn potentially, whether it be
Nebula.
Was it either start per turn? Honestly, I think one of the bigger ones should be a once per turn or once per game thing. I think we talked about that potentially being like a new key phrase, or like the way they've said it, like the next time this occurs.
Well, once per game is going to be on the Thing and Human Torch, and then also Kid Omega does have specify next and this turn.
Yeah, which let's also talk about the activate abilities as well as a very simple way to go in through that, because activate it came out in September of last year with the Symbiote Spider-Man season. And it's struggled a little bit to land since then. And we now are getting, again, another September of last year was a full activate season. We've got a couple activate cards coming out again as for data mines next month, as well as potentially a lot more activate cards coming out in September, where it really feels like they've struggled to figure out what they wanted to do with activate for a long period, and they've slowly found their way through.
Yeah, and I think something we talked about like on the last Yap as well is like when it comes to like development of like the cards and stuff, how far in advanced some of these cards are. So like they've had 6 months at least to kind of just mess around with and see how can this have an impact now? How can we make activate feel better? And I think when we look at the Dynamines 2, most of the activates are mid-range cards, whether that be 3 or less. And I think that is kind of the sweet spot for activates. 4-cost activates just feel a little too expensive, which I think that's another just huge thing when it comes to it. Like Symbiote Spider-Man was a 4-cost, Scarlet Spider was a 4-cost, Hellcow is a 4-cost. Like those, of course, what they did, you kind of wanted to do more late game, especially like the Symbiote Spider-Man and with the Hellcow. Scarlet Spider, of course, you can do some of that stuff late game too if you like can buff it up the right way. But I think the concept of it and the way Snap plays is you're really not necessarily playing a waiting game. And I think that's something that they've done really well, like with like spells in Arcana. Like it really feels like it's something you can just play out. You don't have to really set this up. And I think that really helps with a differentiation between the two, which they came out within like 6 months of each other, something like that. So I think that's something really interesting. They've looked at how great of an impact I think that spells have had, and maybe that has caused them to adjust the way they do some of these activates with more testing. And, you know, we have some of these activates now that have an activate, you know, Jocasta, which is, you know, Ultron's wife, has the activate, you can use these activates this turn, and it doesn't spend one of the activates. I think that is really interesting, especially just thinking about these all like conceptually. Activates in a better spot now, but that season it was just so slow for a fast-paced game.
Yeah, and they've definitely I'd argue have done a much better job with it as time goes on. But I think you're correct there that a lot of the forecasts, like the only one I probably would argue is that I think Hellcow is probably fine.
Yeah.
Out of all those forecast activates, but out of everything else, activates still feel like they really struggled, and even Symbiote Spider-Man had to get buffed inside of the season. One of the few cards that you know, introduced a new thing and then was like, oh, you know what, we got to make it better here. So
it got buffed in this season too.
It did, yeah. I really feel like activate's one that I'm hoping, as like whenever September finishes, I'm hoping we look at it and be like, this makes sense in Marvel Snap now. Yes. Like, yes, we do have some cards that now work in it and that do a lot of different things inside of it, and they all balance each other, they all work fine. I'm hoping that once the time comes, we can be like, yeah, this is solid. And maybe by that point, we can go click that selectability button, Tuck, and maybe it'll be activated in there. For some reason, you still have no ability, but you don't have activate.
Really?
Nope. Don't know why.
On which?
No. So if you tap away from the card real fast, the selectability to the right there. I'm kind of covering it there, but you can see. Activate still isn't even there. But we have a way to show all the no ability cards, by the way.
That's freaking...
As we really need all those. As I needed a way to organize the 7 cards that I'm playing the least, probably.
Yeah, no.
I don't know.
That's funky. That is... No.
God. This... Loki is a card that I feel like has also extreme... It's a new mechanic, right? Of just kind of like... What if your deck didn't matter? Kind of is the way that I feel like it's not as much a mechanic, but it's like a new area to explore where you have this, but also, again, we also have Airshim that exists.
Yeah.
That we also could see a little bit of with the High Voltage Overdrive. Both of these cards kind of just say like, your main deck isn't important here. Whatever cards those are, yeah, sure, whatever. It doesn't matter because you're just getting rid of that. Or at one point, Loki was hand instead.
Which, like, Airshim, you have the extra energy to play through to kind of just help your combo or even tech pieces get better valued there. And with Loki, it's like, I'm going to race you. I'm going to race you against your deck. Will I be able to play my power or your deck out better than you will, because I will draw the combo pieces that you don't have, and they are going to cost 1 less.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll have to see how those feel. Not even mentioning, right? They added a little bit for skills, which we'll talk about here in a second, but banishing.
Yep.
I remember seeing people being like, all right, cool. You remember that one thing where Yondu banishes another thing, doesn't destroy something, right? Like a little bit of like flavor there is lost potentially, but
it's because of Misery, and then they buffed Misery. So they did that because they had Yondu destroying everything. You get too much death value, and they didn't want to make death a 9 cost, so they made Yondu banish instead.
I don't know about this one. I feel like banishing has really it's this, and then it's like Hotel Inferno, right? That's kind of it right now in terms of cards.
Yep, they did that because they didn't also want any elixir value.
Have you been able to get any elixir value with Kid Omega with like the revival bit?
I have not played the Elixir Kid Omega decks. I've played Phoenix Force. I've gotten Phoenix Force value, but I have not played like the Black Panther Shuri Galacta deck. I've been doing more of, I want to see if this works in this classic deck. Do you actually get value from KO in that, opposed to I'm just going to cause chaos. Which, I mean, the chaos deck, you know, people like did put up numbers its first week, but like it's also so combo heavy. I didn't want to add another combo heavy kind of piece to like the decks I was playing.
Yeah. This is one as well. Who Morgan Le Fay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing where it's like, am I really? It's while she's a 4/7.
Yep.
And we're like, why would I use it?
Yeah, no, I haven't tried any of those decks. I've seen some people do well with them, but
I have. It also, but just feels like incredibly. I feel like that they've really struggled as they've messed with more and more of these returning from this pile thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
At one point, the discard pile could have cards come back, and that was the only one because of Hela Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
Then you had Phoenix Force enter the game, and then Phoenix Force could bring cards back.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the next big one was kind of just like Fenris Wolf snuck in, did both, and now we're just seeing more and more and more. And it feels like it's, I don't know. It feels like a lot of these are just really, really missing, or they're struggling because they want to be able to do both. We even saw that a little bit with Dormammu, where people were like, this discard Dormammu, kind of loving it, because it was bugged for like first couple of days where discard worked, and then stop.
They said that's not actually supposed to be how it's intended, which is like interesting because like you have Hela, which is completely just discard and it's cost specific, but like it's interesting. It's like they could have released, or maybe they couldn't have, the like data mine card coming out in August that makes it so you can't add cards to the board unless they're played or moved. Would have been an immediate set counter to Hela. That we're rating almost a year from past Hela meta for that. But like, and then also Mercury from Sam Wilson would have been an immediate counter to Sam Wilson instead of having to change his power. But like, it goes back into they do take time to develop these cards. So like, even though the meta is like this right now, why don't we have a card this next month to do this? Is because it takes the time. It's a process. Even if some testing isn't done into the mirror matches, they still do some testing with these cards. I really, 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 really wish, especially when it came to some of these new mechanic cards, that they would let us creators test some of these cards so we can like apply theory crafting and stuff to it to kind of better help them and better help us in general as a community really understand these cards. I think that would be amazing, especially
for a dev build of Marvel Snap.
Yes.
Like, even just to be like, just ask them like, hey, the game doesn't work when I play Dormammu against itself. Why?
Yeah.
But I mean, I agree. I feel like those type of situations, they're really struggling right now with exactly what they want to do there. And I'm glad they are exploring these new situations and exploring this new stuff. I'm gonna give you a take though. I don't think that this should have been the end of skills. I don't think this month should be the only month where they do a bunch of skills. Right now, it's been this month and then Agamotto. And that's it.
We should get more skills this year.
I agree. And again, according to data mines, we're not getting any skills for a bit of time. And I think that Nicholas Scratch potentially is fine because they've got the knowledge of like 16, this card that's coming out either end of year or maybe next year, right? Because they work really far in advance. This card loves skills.
Yeah.
And maybe it's great with Nicholas Scratch because you're getting a bunch of them. But this currently, it's like, this is one I've seen everyone being like, all right, buff it. It doesn't work. And at the beginning of the month, I was like, maybe wait until more skills come out. I don't think I will be shocked if Clea is enough to make Nicholas Scratch feel like a good card. But even with Merlin, who can play a skill pretty much every single turn after you play him.
Yep. Well, it goes to the concept too, like how big do you need to get Nicholas Scratch for him to get the value? Like it's kind of like, yes, there's decks that can really buff Nicholas Scratch, and maybe it is the Clea thing, like, but Clea, like, you get Clea to go off like once or twice. Okay, that's pretty good. Like Nicholas Scratch, you have to play what, like 3 different spells to be able to get Nicholas Scratch to a 1/5. But like you can put that more effort into kind of maybe get Nicholas Scratch to a 1/5. And like, is this truly what you want to do? Is this something you actually want to slot into your deck? And I think that's where it gets really interesting in this kind of situation, where if you look at 1/2s, like Clea and Nicholas Scratch are both 1/2s. But you look at Nico. Nico's also 1/2, but it has an honor reveal mechanic that can really change the shape of the game, what you want to do, whether it's extra draws, adding power, doubling herself, changing location, turning a card into a demon, moving a card, like the Swiss Army knife of a 1-drop, opposed to just, I'm going to get power and I'm going to do thing. It's just really interesting to look at all of these 1-drops at a glance, because they're not the most common cards in the game either. Like 3-drop, I still think is the biggest category of cards of, you know, the mid-range value and how they array from tech to strong to all that. It's like, how do you make and get the most value of Nicholas Scratch? What is that number you need to hit? And I don't think we have found that yet, which also puts a damper on the potential of this, because we haven't found out, well, you actually need to do all this with Nicholas Scratch, because he's kind of just a substitute piece right now.
Let me ask you this, Tuck. You're a new player in Marvel Snap. You open the game. You're like, all right, cool. I've made it out of this the beginner pass. I now have access to, you know, I've got access to snap packs, collect tokens, this whole thing. Let me open a snap pack. My first one, I'll open a series 4. You open it, you get Nicholas Scratch. Hey, Tuck, can you do me a favor, hit that question mark on Nicholas Scratch right there? What is a skill? As a new player, I'm really interested. You can't even click, you have to click the far left of it, or like, weird. Skill cards don't have power and are always banished, gone forever after taking effect. Yeah, no, cool. What's a skill?
True.
You can, like, that doesn't, This is, I think, like one of the things they've talked about in the past where they really wanted cards to be intuitive. They didn't want to have a bunch of like text explain stuff, and they added the question mark to do that. The question mark doesn't work here. As a new player, I have no idea what a skill is.
No, you're supposed to assume. You're supposed to assume what a skill is, Dance. What do you mean you don't know what a skill is? You don't have skills?
I don't know. I don't know. I thought I had skills in Marvel Snap as this new player. I've been like crushing all these bots that I don't know I'm playing against. I'm a new player experience. I'm on a high, and then all of a sudden I get Nicholas Scratch as my first card. And let me tell you, my new player experience has gone down in absolute the crap hole, because like, what am I doing with this card? What do you mean a skill it doesn't have power? How could a card not have power? What does a skill do?
Yep. Yeah. No. It's like no. I'm thinking of Kevin from The Office is when he has the episode where he said, "Few words do trick." You know, like he.
Oh yeah. Why use big word when few word do trick?
We don't want to have all this extra text in the cards to explain stuff in game, so you actually need to use other resources to kind of find out why these cards do their thing.
I mean, why use big word when few word do trick? Few word. Follow Tucker on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch. Subscribe down below. Comment. Share. He cool. Give love.
What's the word of the day?
Very
Dance?
cool. I don't.
Skill is going to be the word of the day.
If you all made it to the end of this video, yeah, let us know by using the word skill in the comments down below. Sorry, legitimately though, please don't follow Tucker. He's actually really awesome. Like, I was trying to do the bit, but I don't feel like I'm giving him enough credit. He's actually incredible. He does a great job with the Yap, with all the videos. Y'all, he's putting out like 5 videos a week right now. Man's on that grind, and he's absolutely killing it. So make sure y'all show him the love. Share these videos, right? He's putting all these different things. Let people know. Again, I think the top cards of the week, it's really interesting, really cool thing. It's a new thing he's trying to go for. So share that stuff with other people. Let them try to learn, you know? All right, cool. What do you mean Killmonger's a little bit sneaky? Is this Killmonger best card? You tell me that we're getting some crazy stats here with Victoria Hand right now? I don't know. I won't know this unless I'm watching his top cards video, because it's not just like, you know, whatever the most played card is on Untapped. Nah, he's going into the details. He's figuring out the highest win rate. He's figuring out the best decks, the ones that are being used in a variety of places. Give him the love. Check him out.
Maybe, but like, still click all Dance's links first and make sure you're subscribed to all of his stuff, because you should be.
Let us know if you made it to the end of this Yap by using skill in your comment down below. The word skill, however you want to do, just throw it, just sneak it in there, just sneak it into the comment. We believe in you.
Sneaky link.
Sneaky link. I don't know, but there's definitely some places where these new mechanics have really done a good job. Some of them where I feel like they've missed. But I am excited for these like next couple of months, assuming we can hopefully get more skills. Because honestly, I think the biggest thing I've realized is that we need some more skills. I think sooner.
Yes, sooner rather than later, because if not, some of just like this card in general is just a card that's going to sit in your collection, and like you spent resources to get this card, you know, kind of. And like this isn't like, oh well, I unlocked this card in a, you know, this pool, like, or I did this in a game mode. Like I spent resources on this. Can I please get at least some value?
Yep.
Yeah, so.
I'd agree with that 100%. I think that's what my biggest thing that who was it? I think Perry was the one who talked about like activates just kind of sucked for a while and they didn't know what they were doing. I think they do now know, right? They took that time, they figured it out. I think skills right now suck and they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, some skills, well, I mean, not skills don't suck.
I think
it's
the
just
concept of skills.
Nicholas Scratch is not a good card right now, I think is more of the thing, opposed to, because Merlin's skills are great, Agamotto's skills are pretty solid. The Winterwood Tomb is no longer something that has to get nerfed. It is so OP kind of thing, like we were thinking Agamotto's season. They fixed the town Mandala, which helped. Dance wasn't thinking that. And then, you know, we'll see what happens with Clea. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Definitely follow all of the steps and stuff Dance was talking about earlier. If you guys got the skills to pay the bills. And yeah, it's been real. God bless and laters.